Hello YouTube, and here we go again. I'm Nate and I'm gonna show you how to take this image and transform it into this image in Lightroom. Okay, so the main difference here is the dynamic range, or it seems to be that you get more of the blues, you get more detail in the shadows, and also I added this huge beam of light into the photograph. Of course the colors look off. You can see a lot of chromatic aberration. This is just an example. This shot was like half accidental shot. Basically I was setting my camera, setting the exposure, and this is something that came out, so I thought why not make it into a video. So what we're gonna start with is the temperature. I want the photograph to be a tiny bit warmer, like +5 is okay, I think. Then we're gonna go to the highlights. We're going to put the highlights -100, the shadows +100. So we get a lot of details in the shadows and we get a lot of details in the highlights. Now I'm gonna push the whites a tiny bit up and the blacks a tiny bit down. I'm gonna push the clarity like +5, somewhere around there. Highlights maybe not -100, and shadows maybe not +100. I don't want too much noise in the photo. Vibrance gonna bump up, saturation bump down a bit, and the classic S curve and the tone curve. That's what I'm gonna do now. Shadows, highlights, boosted up a bit of the contrast. Same I'm gonna do here with the contrast slider. I'm gonna take it up like +20 something, +30. Now we're gonna go to the color toning. I'm gonna play a bit with the colors. The main thing I want to do is to lower a bit of the yellows, boost the greens and the blues. Okay, so the aquas count. I want them to be like a very light aqua color. I'm gonna take down the luminance. Same thing I'm gonna do with the blues. Blues somewhere around -35. Saturation, I'm gonna lower it tiny bit and take down the luminance because I want a lot of color in the sky. Now I'm gonna go to the orange slider, play with the colors in the orange slider, -11 I think. Saturation bump up a tiny bit, luminance let's add some luminance. I think +18. Yellow, same thing, just gonna play with it. I think the hue I'm gonna leave as is. Saturation, I'm gonna boost the saturation a bit, not so much, maybe +5, somewhere around 5. That's what I think. And luminance, I'm gonna boost the luminance somewhere to around +40. Greens, I want to play with the greens. I really want to bring out the detail in the greens, and I want to make it look complementary to the light aquas in the sky. So I'm gonna boost the hue +40, saturation boosted as well, +45, +50 maybe, and luminance all the way up, almost all the way up, +90. That's the basics of it. Now we're gonna play with the purples. As you can see, you have a purple shirt here, purple shirt here. I don't want them to be purple in the photo, so I'm gonna take the saturation all the way down, boost the luminance only. So the main color in the purples will be white. I'm gonna play with the magenta, see if it changes something. Does not change anything, so I'm gonna take the saturation all the way down, and that's the main editing that I've done here. By the way, sorry for my English, I'm not a native English speaker. Now I'm gonna play with split toning and see what comes out of it. I'm gonna add some oranges, some yellows to the highlights, maybe some blues to the shadows, a tiny bit like so. Let's see how it looks. Before, after, really small changes. Even I'm gonna take away some of the shadows. Detail sharpening not relevant. Enable profile corrections and auto. This is what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna crop the image, and when you're cropping the image, don't go too high, don't go too low. I don't care about this stone bench or whatever this is. I just want the tip of his shoe barely touching the bottom frame. Okay, that's this, and I want the top part of the frame, the upper left corner, to be touching the trees. And what I also want to do is to crop it this way so this guy isn't cropped. Yeah, I think that's okay. That's about it. Basically what I'm gonna do now is just play with some filters. The radial filter, a big one here, centered to the sun. Invert mask, it's probably the most important part about this filter, because if you don't invert the mask, it's gonna apply onto the whole image, but not on everything inside the circle. I'm gonna take the color temperature, set it to plus 20 something. Not gonna touch the exposure, bump up the contrast a bit, bump up the highlights a bit. Shadows, definitely bump the shadows, plus 25. Tiny bit of clarity. Saturation, again, not a lot, somewhere around plus 10. Excuse me. And I think that's it for the radial filter. What I'm gonna do next is take this like gradient type filter and apply it to the sky. What I'm gonna do with the sky is lower the temperature. Exposure wise, I'm gonna lower a tiny bit the exposure, add some contrast, highlights, take away, add, that's up to you, I guess. Minus 10 is good for me. Shadows, now shadows, I think I'm gonna leave them as is. Saturation, I don't want to boost the saturation, I don't want to take away from the saturation. That's one part. Now what I personally like to do is to get some more contrast from the floor, so I'm gonna take the brush tool and I'm just gonna paint with maximum flow onto the wall. Now you can click the O button to see where you're painting. Okay, something like this. Don't worry about staying in lines too much, it's really gonna be okay. Then I take the erase option and I'm gonna erase it from the people that are sitting here. Again, maximum flow so we don't make any mistake while doing this. And always when I look at this photograph, I wonder where were they looking, the guys that I'm erasing the mask from, the brush. Okay, like so. Erase a bit from the chairs here, from this lady, this lady, this lady, and erase it from these two dudes just a bit. It doesn't matter because they're really small in the frame. And what I'm gonna do with this, click again, so the red mask disappears. Take this exposure down, take the contrast probably all the way up, highlights all the way down, shadows a tiny bit up, and clarity, I want a lot of clarity in the floor. And I think that's it for this part of the editing. Now I just look at the photo and I think what I want to do. Now I see a lot of chromatic aberration. I see all the blue colors here, the aqua colors here, and around these dudes and somewhere in the crowd. So basically I'm gonna kind of pixel peep this thing and I'm gonna erase it by lowering the saturation. So what I'm gonna do is again take the brush, click O, and I'm just gonna paint away with the brush over all those aberrated, I guess, areas. Sometimes the whites become blue because we play too much with the colors, but those are things that you can fix, and I don't think that this photo is like a great example for great editing, but I think it can make a good Instagram photo. That's the sole purpose of this thing. It's like editing for Instagram, boosting up dynamic range, showing more colors popping. And I think that's it. Like, click O again, and saturation, boost it way down. Yeah, that definitely adds a bit. Now we can make it, those areas, more yellow. That's gonna add. Let's see the before and after. Okay, wonderful. We had a lot of blues over here, we had some blues over here, and it's less blue now. It looks better. So we click done. Now what else have I done with this photo? Let's see. I can take another filter and add some kind of leading depth into the photo, I guess. Basically, if the light is coming from over there and to my direction, see where the shadows are? I'm gonna try and add some shadows in those areas from the bottom of the photograph. Let's see how it looks. Okay, like this. Add some contrast. Maybe take away exposure. Nah, I'm not gonna take away exposure. And rotate it so it looks good. Like this. Like this. And let's see before and after. Yep, I think that's definitely good. Okay, wonderful. Now I'm gonna open the second photo. You know what? I'm gonna open the before and after, I think. Okay, so that's the photograph that I showed you. This is how it looks like, as you can see. And now I'm gonna show you what we have done so far. So far, this is what we have managed to do. The difference is really slight. The other photo is a bit colder. We can get this by setting our temperature to 0. And now you can look at the differences again. This is what I showed you in the beginning of the video. As you can see, the floor is a bit wider. You have a tiny bit more exposure, and on the floor around here, the sunbeam is bigger. And this is what we have done. Now let's take the radial filter that we have chosen and boost up the brightness so it looks somewhere like what I showed you in the beginning. Now we can make this a bit smaller, like so. And let's set the exposure to 1.0 like this. Now we direct it to the sun, maybe make it a bit wider, and that's it. This is it, guys. This is the whole editing process. It's fairly simple. Now this is how the photograph used to look like, untouched, before we had done anything with it. And just in a second I'm gonna show you this is how the photograph looks now. Okay, so this is the big difference. You got more color popping out, you got this beautiful sunbeam, you got way more dynamic range in my opinion, and it looks better. Now the only thing we need to do now is sharpen it. Sharpening is easily done by taking the slider up. I like to take it somewhere around 60, detail somewhere around 40. In this case we need a lot of masking, okay, so it looks less noisy, noise reduction. Let's see if anything helps at all. Yep, I think this is the type of photograph when you can just take the luminance up, like I think somewhere around 50, because there is really no fine detail in this one. Let's do luminance 40, detail 60, and that's it.